Welcome. My name is Joaquin Nunez for Voz Media, and with me today is Dave McCormick, businessman and Republican candidate for the Senate in Pennsylvania. Mr. McCormick, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Of course, you have been campaigning throughout the state for the last several months. What are you hearing from voters?
Well, listen, I'm hearing from voters that they're looking for change, that they're deeply distressed about the future of the country. 80% of Pennsylvanians think the country is headed in the wrong direction. And so really this race is about a choice between someone who's an outsider like me, someone who's been a combat veteran, went to West Point, and someone who's been a businessman that's created jobs or helped create jobs right here in Pennsylvania, against the guy who's been a career politician. My opponent's been in elected office for 34 years, 18 years in the Senate, and has just been too weak and too liberal with his policies to get our great Commonwealth and our country on track. And, you know, the issues most on people's minds that are the result of that weak leadership are a sky-high inflation. Mm-hmm. Prices have gone up by more than 20% under Biden, Harris, and Casey, because Casey voted 98% of the time with President Biden. Mm-hmm. And the war on fossil fuels has driven up price, and it's really squeezed working families. And the second big issue is the wide open border. Mm-hmm. And the border crisis has really had taken a real toll on Pennsylvania, economically, because there's a huge burden on our social services and schools and hospitals. But the fentanyl that comes across the southern border has killed 4,000 Pennsylvanians last year, more than 100,000 nationally. So those are the two big issues I hear the most about. I hear a lot about crime too. Mm-hmm. I hear about the war on fossil fuels, but inflation and the border seem to be the most important ones.
And getting back to the economy, Senator Casey recently said that the reason why prices are going up is because corporations are scheming to make them go up. Is he right?
No, he's not right. You know, he can't run on his record, so he's trying to make excuses. When President Biden proposed the spending that he proposed, $5 trillion of new spending, a number of economists came out and said, including Democratic economists like Larry Summers, who was the former Treasury Secretary, said that much spending is going to create inflation. And Bob Casey said, no, that's not true. We got to go big or go home, and this isn't going to cause inflation. And now it's caused this inflation that's really destroying working families. And so Bob Casey now is trying to blame something else. He's trying to blame corporate greed. He's trying to come back with price controls. And listen, I'm not saying there isn't some company somewhere that's raised their prices too much. What I'm saying is that the cause of inflation is all the spending. And you can't have the government setting prices. You know, we have this experience in Latin America. We have this experience in Venezuela, where price controls destroy the economy. We had this experience in the United States during the Nixon administration. Price controls are terrible for consumers. They're terrible for an economy. The reason for inflation is the weak, excessive, out-of-control spending of Biden, Harris, and Bob Casey, and we're going to have to rein that spending in and unlock our energy to bring prices back under control.
And also with the border, Pennsylvania is a bit far from the southern border, but has been affected by the border crisis anyway. What has been the direct impact of the border crisis in your state, particularly with the influx of fentanyl?
Yeah. You know, I've gone to the southern border twice in the last 2 years. I've been there more often than Senator Casey in his 18 years, and more often than the border czar, Vice President Harris. And listen, it's, you know, I think anyone who's an American citizen, anyone who's here legally would view what's happened on the border as a huge crisis. My wife is an immigrant from Egypt. She came to America when she was 5. So I'm a very pro-immigration person. I'm very strongly supportive that America's future depends on legal immigration. But we have to stop this incredible flow. More than 10 million illegal immigrants have come across the border since Biden and Harris came into office. I went to the border and saw the wide open border. The wall was stopped. People are flooding across the border. And it's had an economic impact on Pennsylvania. You have 13 sanctuary counties or cities that have a huge burden on social services, education, hospital systems. It's just, it's very expensive because these illegal immigrants are not taxpayers, and so they're putting a burden on the social structure. And it's been a huge cause of fentanyl death. So what happens is the fentanyl is very concentrated. It's poison. It comes across the border from the cartels, and within 48 or 72 hours, it's in Pennsylvania, going into small towns like where I grew up in Bloomsburg, which is up near Scranton, and it destroys communities. And I just sat down with 4 fentanyl families. You know, this is not a drug that's just taken by drug addicts. This is a lot of innocent people accidentally take fentanyl because it's cut into other drugs, legal over-the-counter drugs, and it's pure poison. We lost almost 100,000 Americans. This is a war on our communities, and I think we got to get tough and close that border. And if I was in the Senate, you know, I would argue on day one for determining that the cartels are terrorist groups, and we need to go after them like terrorist groups and destroy the manufacturing and distribution networks that are killing Americans, killing Pennsylvanians.
I also want to ask you about energy policy. 2 questions in one here. Can you briefly explain what fracking is, and can a candidate who is in favor of banning fracking like Kamala Harris win in a state like Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Well, fracking is a really breakthrough part of the energy revolution that allows those searching for natural gas to send a drilling instrument down into the shale, and then by using an enormous pressured water, be able to get access to the natural gas. And the big development is you can go horizontally under the surface up to a mile to access this natural gas heavy shale. And so this is a very environmentally friendly form of energy, because you have a very small footprint in terms of where you drill, and you can then go horizontally to get access to natural gas. It's also a very clean source of fossil fuels. So natural gas in Pennsylvania, we have the 4th largest natural gas reserves in the world. So if we can access that natural gas, get it out of the ground, and then be able to put it into pipelines that can go across state lines, or even ship it through an export facility overseas, this would be great for America's security. It would be fantastic for Pennsylvania's economy. It would be great for manufacturing in Pennsylvania, because you'd have this great, cheap energy. And it's great for the environment, because the pure, clean natural gas from Pennsylvania exported around the world would replace old coal-fired plants in places like India. And so this is the path to a clean environment, the path to energy, economic growth within Pennsylvania and America. It's also the key to our national security.
Okay, so candidate like Kamala Harris, who is in favor of banning fracking, can she win Pennsylvania with that rhetoric?
Listen, I mean, she's now tried to change her position. Senator Casey's tried to change his position. I like to say it's like synchronized flip-flopping. They're flip-flopping on the positions because it's an election year. And I don't think so. I mean, I think Pennsylvanians will see through this. But recognize you don't have to explicitly ban fracking to ban fracking. Okay. You can ban fracking through red tape. You can ban fracking through EPA, Environmental Protection Agency regulations. You can ban fracking through lawsuits. You can make it harder and harder to frack, where businesses just won't come to Pennsylvania. They'll go to Oklahoma or Texas or other places. So the key here is Kamala Harris and Bob Casey going to embrace an energy future for America that's going to really take advantage of our fracking capability, our natural gas reserves in Pennsylvania? And the answer, I think, is no. I think you should take Kamala Harris at her own words and Bob Casey at his own words, which is they want to ban fracking and transition energy workers.
And moving on to the presidential election, of course, what is at stake between choosing about President Trump and Vice President Harris?
Well, I think it's really a race at the top of the ticket, and really in my race, between leadership that's strong, in the case of President Trump, in the case of me, and leadership that's shown itself to be weak. In the case of Kamala Harris, look at the border policy. Look at the adversaries around the world that are testing us and challenging us. They're not fearful of America's strength. So it's the kind of leadership. It's also policies. So it's common sense policies on the side of President Trump. It's common sense to develop our energy sector. It's common sense to rein in our spending so we don't have inflation, rise in prices for working families. It's common sense to take advantage of our great energy capabilities. Common sense to secure our border. Common sense to fund our police and bring law and order to our cities. Common sense that we need strength through weakness. On Kamala Harris's side is a radical, liberal San Francisco agenda that Bob Casey will support every step of the way. He's too weak to stand up to this liberal excess, these extreme liberals in his party. And so on her side, I think you take her, don't believe Dave McCormick. Trust her own words. She says she wants to ban fracking, transition energy workers, give amnesty to 10 million illegal immigrants, make sure they get federal benefits. She wants to have mandatory buybacks of guns. She wants to get rid of private healthcare insurance. She wants to defund the police. These are her positions in her own words, which is a radical liberal agenda that's out of touch with Pennsylvania, and I think will destroy our country if it's allowed to continue. So that's what the choice is all about. And so put aside personalities. Just ask yourself the question, if you're a voter in Pennsylvania or America, which one of those two visions is going to take take America in the right direction and ensure the most economic opportunity, the most American dream opportunity for our citizens?
Sir McCormick, I know your campaign schedule is tight, so thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, I'm so glad to be with you, Joaquin. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and I wish you a great day.